So, this evening, it's going to be a very rich evening. The topic, where is the love? Love is something that is it's a fundamental human need. We're all looking to experience love, to give it and to receive it. But it's quite an elusive thing. And we're very happy that Sister Jayanti is here with us today. Sister Jayanti, many of you will know, but many of you may not, so I'm going to give a little bit of background. Her official title is she's the European Director of the Brahma Kumaris, and she's also the Brahma Kumaris representative at the United Nations in Geneva. But she also, as part of her work, she travels very, very widely. I mean, I would think the count is well over 100 countries where Sister Jayanti has visited. She's always giving, she goes on speaking tours, she's giving sustenance to people in various places. But what this experience has given her is a real understanding of and an appreciation of the differences of the different cultures, the different faiths, the different ways of doing things and seeing things, but also the things that we have in common. And I think really the one thing that we all have in common is that yearning for love, for true love. And so we're very happy that she's here with us today to share something of her understanding and her insights and her experience of what is this thing called love and where do we find it. And once we found it, how can we keep it? How can we maintain it and sustain it? So the way this evening is going to run is that we're going to ask Sister Jayanti shortly to come up on stage and share with us her thoughts. And then after a little while, I will come and join her on stage and I will ask some questions based on what she said, but also, I hope, some of the questions that you might have wanted to ask. Does that sound okay? Okay, so I'd like now to ask Sister Jayanti to come up and join us on stage. That's great. Welcome, Sister Jayanti.
Good evening and a greeting of peace. Om Shanti. Om Shanti literally means I am peace, for those who are here for the first time. And you'll hear it often every time you come to this house, because that in a way is really the starting point of everything that we do here. The reminder of the awareness of who I am, the inner being, and that the inner being is a being of peace. Where is love? I'm sure it's not just the song, but it's also a question that you would have asked yourself or others many times. The news is not something that is very pleasant to see any time anymore. And you think that it's reached its limit, but it gets worse and worse somehow. Very strange. And sometimes there's even a question, what happened to humanity? The humanness of humanity? I don't know. Meeting the mayor earlier this evening, I was reminded of a very powerful commandment that we've been given. And I see it's a commandment for the whole of humanity, not just for people of one particular religious tradition. And that commandment has been, you know it, love your neighbor as you would love yourself. And so, how come it's not happening? It's something that's been articulated in all the traditions across the world, and especially within the Western world, the foundation, the commandments, and this is the very first one. And yet, we've forgotten. And maybe the reason why we are not experiencing love for our neighbor, go back to the starting point. Love them as you would love yourself. And so, is there something within that statement? Maybe we are not loving ourselves. Maybe we don't know how to love ourselves. And maybe we don't even know about ourselves, who we are actually. And I think that if we can crack that little code, then maybe we can find a method whereby we can start loving our neighbors and really having the world family that many of us dream of or many of us have heard about. This particular song is a recent one, but a very ancient one, in the sense that it goes back to the days that I was young. It's a song that I think everybody's familiar with. Imagine. Yeah? Imagine a world without war. Imagine where people all are able to love each other. Is it possible? They say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And I think that's very true. It's not just one person's dream. It's a dream that many of us share. And something within me tells me that if there's a universal dream that we hold so close to our hearts, even though everything on the external level is telling us the opposite, yet we still carry this hope in our hearts that it's possible to have that dream come true. It's telling me that there's a very strong possibility that it can be real. And I think that the secret is within this particular expression of loving others, but learning to love myself first. And it sounds very strange. Love yourself. Sounds a bit of ego there. But yet, it's not egoistic. It's actually a statement of great humility, because it's talking about the inner being. When we are told, love yourself, it's actually saying, well, first of all, recognize who you are. And just as conflict and war is part of our vocabulary, the other thing that's very much part of the current scene, and has been for quite a while, is the whole subject of identity. Who am I? Where do I belong? Where have I come from? I know that it was a question I was grappling with in my teens, and I was very fortunate that it was spirituality that gave me answers. That, as I say, way back in the 60s, it was a question I was struggling with, because maybe within the last 50, 60 years, there's been a huge amount of cross-fertilization. You have people with, somebody was saying yesterday, they're a quarter Norwegian. In fact, it was Rachel. So, where is our ancestry? Who are our ancestors? What is the land we come from? I was born in India. My parents were born in that bit of India which today is Pakistan. And we migrated to England. My brother went off to Canada, is now in America, and I'm here in England. And so that little sequence of travel is maybe the story of many, many others sitting here. I see someone with a brown skin and I would say, are you from India? Well, they're not. 150 years ago, their parents, grandparents, ancestors went to Africa, or they went to the Caribbean, and from there they went somewhere else, and then they arrived in England. So identity, where do I belong? Who am I? But in fact, it's not these external things that can give us an answer. if I identify myself with my religion, well, there's a possibility that in 10 years' time, I might have found something else that maybe reaches my heart more than the religion into which I was born. It's possible. Maybe I identify with my age. I'm young. I can do everything, anything. Well, I'm not going to stay that way. Maybe I identify with my profession. I'm a doctor. Well, at some point, I'm going to retire. What will I be then? I won't be a doctor anymore. I identify with my designation. Outside my door, I have a label that says Chief Engineer. And maybe tomorrow I won't be the Chief Engineer anymore. In today's world, people have maybe 3, 4 career changes within the span of 40 years. That never happened before. The number of houses I have, the number of cars that I have, my bank balance, is that my identity? And so when I look at what exactly is happening, then I say, those things are not who I am. I'm something else. And when these questions begin to arise, then I know that the way to find answers is, I can listen to a lot, I can read a lot, but finally it has to be the journey within that's going to lead me to answers. And that's exactly what happened to me. I found myself listening to spiritual teachings and started to meditate, and the meditation gave me the experience that this physical form is separate to the inner being. And the inner being that I am, a being of light, the soul, is something quite separate to the physical form. I occupy this body, but this isn't I. You know, we use the expression my soul. Have you heard people talk about my soul? And did you realize when you heard this expression that it's a bit topsy-turvy? Why? Who's speaking when we say my soul? The body? Who's speaking? In fact, when the soul speaks, and it's always the soul that's speaking, the body itself can't speak on its own without the soul. So when the soul speaks, it's I who is speaking. And this is my body. The soul speaks and says, this is mine. But the body can't say, my soul. Because this is matter. Consciousness is within the inner being. And when I identify with this matter, then many, many problems arise. But the first and foremost problem is that of lack of self-esteem. Because then instantly, identification with the external means there's the feeling of either superiority or inferiority. Both are the same coin, the two sides. And so, am I going to identify with color? Well, the color of my skin is 1/16 of an inch. That's it, 1/16. Peel this away, not very comfortable, but just think about it. And what's underneath? The blood, sweat, and tears of every single human being are the same. Really. And so identification with this is actually a non-starter. And yet we keep putting labels based on this. And yet when you hear the sound of a child, you wouldn't know where it's from. The sound of all children, anywhere in the world, whether it's laughter or whether it's tears, it's identical. Language comes later. And so the whole thing of better or worse, more or less, is a very external thing that we've latched onto. And it is this that creates the divisions and the conflict. And then you wonder what's happening to humanity. And just simply this switch of awareness from the external to the inner being, the being who I am. And there's no comparison with anyone else. On the one side, each and every one of us is unique, absolutely unique. And on the other side, we actually share so much which is the same. Our hopes, our desires, our dreams, our fears, they're all the same. Doesn't matter which bit of the globe we come from. These are universal. And so the qualities of the human spirit and the troubles that the human spirit encounters in its journey in life, they are actually the same. And so coming to the awareness of that inner being, I begin to appreciate what is truly within my own inner world. And what is within my own inner world is even more amazing than all the things that exist outside in this troubled world of ours, but this amazingly beautiful world of ours. It's interesting how even in the darkest of times, there are still things of great beauty that you see. In the midst of winter, I saw this tree that's flowering. And I thought, is it part of climate change going crazy? And I was told, no, it's a winter flowering cherry. And it's so beautiful. Frost, and yet you see this tree that's flowering. Really amazing. So there are things of nature that you come across even in the darkest places, and you begin to appreciate that there's something of beauty which is higher than all the things that human beings can ever do. But whatever that may be out there, the journey inside is absolutely amazing. The power of the mind, the profound depth of the intellect, of our consciousness, our awareness, the vastness of the personality that we hold within ourselves, the memories that we carry. They're trying to create robots and computers that have the same type of versatility and information and creativity, but it's still going to take us time to get there. And it's, of course, humans who've created them, so... So when I look inside, I see all these amazing things, and all contained within this absolute infinitesimal spark of consciousness. But more than that, I see the memories of sorrow, of pain, but I go a bit deeper, and below the surface I see the hope that's still there. I begin to see the love that is there inside, part of my original nature. I see the compassion, I see the truth. And this is for everyone. It's not just the journey of one individual. Just as the hopes and fears are the same, the values that human beings carry within the self are universal. Peace, love, truth, joy. These things you expected me to say, but one that you perhaps don't always think about, that is important, purity. These 5 qualities are the original values, the original qualities of the human spirit, every human spirit. And we discover these as we go on that inner journey. And they're there within the self. And so love isn't something out there. Can't buy it, can't sell it, can't barter or exchange it. Can't win it, can't destroy it, can't create it. But it's deep within, inside. And what I have to learn to do is to connect with it and be able to express it. And as I connect with it and allow it to come into its fullest form, and I express it, then it's not just expressed to 1 or 2 or 3. It's not exclusive in that way. It's inclusive. It takes in everyone. Because today this one is my neighbor, tomorrow this one will be, tomorrow that one will be, or the other one will be. And so all are my neighbors. And in that experience of the inner journey and discovering the values that are my own core values, and realizing the value of the inner being, I begin to have something called self-esteem, value for myself. And when I have self-esteem, I'm able to have value for other people and see them with that respect and treat them with the dignity that they deserve. And as I get to know them, I'm even able to love them. But it started with the self. Getting to know myself, I'm able to love myself. And then, getting to know you, I'm able to love you. And we begin to shift the cycle of anger and hatred and bitterness, and victims are today victims, tomorrow they become the persecutors. It's happening right in front of our eyes, that whole scenario. But if I can learn to love myself, and also if I can learn to love the divine and make that connection with the divine, and again that's a journey that happens only through silence. Prayer, in its most meaningful experience, is a prayer in which the heart communicates with the divine. I'm often asked the question, what's the difference between prayer and meditation? And prayer is the communication with the divine, definitely. But in silence, in meditation, which is actually a deeper continuation of prayer, I'm allowing my mind to be silent so that it's not just my communication with the divine, but it's also giving me space to be able to listen to the signals that the divine wants to give me. And so it becomes a two-way communication. And the signals are not necessarily in words. Now, I don't hear God speaking inside my head. But I can feel it. I can feel God's presence. I can feel God's love. And once I begin to experience God's love, and I'm able to fill myself with that, the neediness that we've been feeling for a long time, that becomes quiet. It disappears. Otherwise, we have so much on the external level, but there's a neediness that we carry within ourselves. I remember some years ago, there was a very famous person in the news, and the news was like every day. it wasn't just a 5-minute flash and it went away, but every day it was more juicy bits of information that were coming through to the public. And really crazy things. And this person had money, fame, power, everything. But the comment that was coming in the media after about 6 to 8 weeks of non-stop stuff was, this person was very needy. And I thought that was a very perceptive comment to have read in a paper. But that's what it was. Everything, 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 but the spirit inside empty, needy. And that thirst for love is quenched only when we make that connection and experience the love of the divine. And as we fill ourselves with that, that's what we share with others. What you have inside is what you give. If I'm discontent, what's going to be the tone of my voice? Listen to the sound of your voice at some time. And at times you will see it's a very gentle, soft, contented voice. And at other times you'll feel the edge there. You'll be able to hear it yourself. And you can pick it up in others, of course. But whatever is inside gets expressed, whether words or actions or even just your eyes and your face. And so, as a soul fills itself with God's love and it's able to maintain inner dignity through the awareness and understanding of the self and its own values, the love for the self and God's love means that there's a treasure that begins to open up within the soul, and that's what the soul is able to share with all. And so yes, I believe peace is possible. I believe love is possible. I believe a better world is possible. And it depends on all of us, and we can do it all together. Let me stop here, and I know that there's other things that need to happen this evening.
Sister Jayanti, thank you very much for leading us into, I think, what will be a very interesting conversation. And I'd like to take up some of the things that you've spoken about. But I wondered if you could start by sharing, you've spoken about it, but sharing perhaps a more personal experience of your own experience of love, what it felt like, what prompted it, and perhaps what its effect on you was.
When I started this journey, I didn't know God. I was really just curious because I wanted to find out. And the first day I was told about the soul. And it was very interesting because it just ignited something here. And as I was walking back home, it was about a 15-minute walk, when I got home, I couldn't remember having walked. It was as if something had lifted me from there and brought me here. I tried to think about it and I couldn't remember. And it was just as if the light was shining here and I must have flown. Second day, I was introduced to the concept of God. And it was a very simple idea that just as a soul is a being of light, this image here, it's a magnified, hugely magnified image, but think about that point of light and just a minute, infinitesimal source of luminous energy, conscient energy, energy with consciousness. And so I was introduced to this concept of God as light. And it didn't feel strange because the day before I'd experienced myself as light. I think if I'd just been told that, well, this is what God looks like, I'd have laughed. Ha ha ha. How's it possible? But because of the experience the day before, then this made total sense. And I began to meditate. And it wasn't like it happened instantly, but it was a very sweet experience immediately. But within about 6 weeks, I was really feeling that I was experiencing not just God's love, but it was a feeling of being in love. And in that experience of being in love, I decided that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I mean, I was dressed like you before. And I decided that I would come and stay at a centre. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't know the steps to make it happen. But it happened surprisingly quickly. And everybody told me it would be very difficult, to be very challenging. And it was none of that. I was in love. And if it meant that wearing this is what I needed to do to come and stay in the ashram, it was fine. 6 yards of curtain material. Washing a hanky was a problem. So washing 6 yards of this stuff, can you imagine? But it was the least of my problems. It just didn't matter, because I was experiencing such a different awareness. Everything on the external level was the same, but life had changed. It was different.
I think this word experience is key, because I can be told that I am peace, I am love, I am happiness. But if that's not my experience, then, as you say, you just ha ha ha. And I think, as you were also saying, is that we generally have or quite often have become to feel uncomfortable with ourselves, or we give ourselves a hard time. You were saying about listen to your tone of voice when I'm talking to myself. I don't think I'd have any friends if I spoke to other people the way I speak to myself. And so I think this thing about experiencing and learning how to, through meditation, to experience that peace within myself. And until I do that, it is just a theory, isn't it? And so it's a case of just, how do we encourage that? How do I get the hope and the courage to make the step to go there?
In fact, it's not such a difficult thing. And if I'm thinking of myself as this, the identity of the physical form, I can very quickly look inside just for a moment and see what's going on in my mind. And the thing that's happening in practically everyone's mind is speed of thoughts, many, many thoughts, whatever the thoughts might be about. But the speed of the thoughts is something which is practically for everyone. And if I say to myself, okay, let me try something else. Let me try focusing my energy here and just turn my attention inwards. In that inner attention, I'll find the speed of my thoughts is slowing down. And if I continue to focus inwards, not only is it slowing down, but there's a lot of space that's being created. And I begin to catch a glimpse of what inner peace looks like. So it's not difficult. You can experience it very quickly. The challenge is you're out there in the world getting on with life and doing all the things you need to do. And then at that moment, just to go in and be peaceful. Now that's the challenge, but it's possible. It can happen.
I think I know myself, sometimes when I'm feeling uncomfortable, I make myself busier and I distract myself with doing different things, when actually what would really help me is just, don't just do something, sit there.
The culture of the world universally today is that, we'll not just say, sit there, but very often you'll hear the statement being made, don't just sit there doing nothing. And so if somebody is actually sitting quietly, it's doing nothing. But in fact, they are doing something. There's something going on in here, but we don't always value it or consider it to be of any consequence. And so we label it doing nothing. And so we've forgotten the value of giving space and time to ourselves. And then is it any wonder that people get stressed, people get burnout, people get sick because the mind is so stressed, it's having an impact on the body. So all this is the result of not realizing the value of silence, of time for the self.
And as you were saying right at the beginning, if love thy neighbour as thyself, if I don't love myself, if I don't learn to know myself and to experience that inner self and love myself, then how are my relationships going to be? Mm-hmm. And what is my idea of love? And this is something perhaps you could talk on a little bit more, is about, how come love has become so misunderstood and so confused with perhaps possessiveness or desire or neediness or obsession or whatever it is. So many things come under the word love, which perhaps aren't very loveful or loving.
You used various expressions connected with love. Well, we confuse love with responsibility. We confuse love with attachment. And we confuse love with physical pleasure. So there is a lot of confusion. Mm. And if I were asked to define love in its purest state, I'd say that state in which there's care and compassion and concern to support and uplift. And yet, when there's love which is saying, but I'm responsible, and there's a state of tension around it, how do I fulfill all my responsibilities? Is that love? Maybe I'm not quite understanding that my first and foremost responsibility is just to be giving of myself and my time and my love and my company, rather than responsibility in the sense of I have to get them good shoes, I have to get them this, I have to get them that. Yes, fine, I need to do all of that. But it doesn't have to be the best in the neighborhood. It doesn't have to be better than the neighbor. Mm. There's a level that's enough, it's okay. And if we get into the whole subject of I want, then it multiplies. But the needs of human beings are not so vast, but we get into desires. And then, why I'm getting into this subject a little bit is because parents don't always realize that their company is what their children want. It's not a better watch or a better mobile phone or a better this, that, and the other. And maybe if, especially when the children are younger, if they give of themselves and their time, then the child won't be so demanding and want all those other things, maybe. But it's important to fulfill that first responsibility of being able to give of myself. Mm. Possessiveness, attachment. And I can't tell you how many people have said to me, but surely attachment is natural. Well, love is natural, but think about possessiveness. Would you say possessiveness is natural? Probably you wouldn't. And there's not that much difference between attachment and possessiveness.
What's the difference?
Possessiveness is more external, in which one can actually see the control issues. You belong to me. In attachment, I'm not saying you belong to me, but I am saying you are mine. And so it's just a subtle, tiny difference, but one is easier to recognize and acknowledge as being negative than the more subtle form.
But isn't it natural to love your family and friends more than other people?
Sometimes people say that, in fact, it's easier to love friends because you can choose your friends. Can't choose family. But yes, there's a natural bond that exists, and in India we would call that bond the bond of karma. And so there are certain things that we've done together that have brought us together in this little biological limit or unit that's called my family. And so there's a lot of exchange to sort out and settle.
And they do know how to press the right buttons, don't they?
Absolutely. And so it's possible to move beyond the limit of 4 or 6 or 8 and have love for my neighbor's children, not just mine, but they also are mine. And if you think about anybody who's been able to make that transition from the very limited nuclear consciousness of my and mine to a bigger consciousness of my family, the global family, or my family, the neighborhood, those are the people we feel have really done something for the world, for society. They're the people we say would have contributed something towards a better world. And so, my choice, I can keep myself restricted, or I can, through a change of consciousness, open up my heart and accept others as my family too.
So it's, in a way, it's a more kind of unlimited kind of love, or a broader kind of love. Now, there is another situation which I'd like your opinion on. It's very easy to love people who love me. It's not so easy to love people who don't love me. What's your take on that?
I won't ask who's had that experience. Is it possible for me to feel pure love in which I'm able to have nothing but good wishes in my heart for everyone? I think it is, because I've met yogis of that caliber, people who have come to the stage where I know others have given them a very hard time, but they're able to transcend that and just still simply give love. I've actually seen it and experienced it in my life with not just one individual, but several. Many of you here know Dadi Janki, and you know that she is now 101, but she was serving here in Leicester for many, many years. And if some of you didn't know her, some of your parents or grandparents even knew her. And an amazing woman, somebody who's had just pure love for everyone she connects with, and in the big universal sense also, but also on a very personal, individual level. And so I know it's possible. And so what do? What they did was, whatever that person was saying or doing, they looked for the goodness of that individual. And they focused on that goodness and didn't allow themselves to see the negativity. And because their vision was constantly maintained with that pure love and good wishes for the other, at some point of time I saw those barriers fall down, and their love was able to reach them, and things began to shift and change, and they were able to start responding, maybe first with respect, and then further down the line even with love.
It's quite a step from where I am now to being that in that position. What kind of steps are needed to get to that position where I am not affected by how someone may treat me, and even if they treat me quite unkindly, or what I feel is unkindly or unfairly? What do I need to have in place to be able to stay strong and, as you say, keep good wishes in that moment?
The more I've practiced this awareness of the inner being, seeing myself as the soul, and created that state of self-esteem and dignity, to whatever extent I've been able to practice this and build up that foundation of self-esteem and inner dignity, the less I'm dependent on how others see me. Not that I'm impervious in the sense that I don't care, but if there are comments being made, there's a critical value that I put on it, and if there's something I need to learn, I must learn from it and not ignore it. But obviously there will be things that are being said that are unfair or unjust, or maybe misunderstood. And so all of that can happen. But if I hold it against them in my heart, I carry that burden within myself. And so my interest to this moment is, what is it that I can do to maintain closeness to my own original qualities as much as possible. I want to be able to maintain my inner peace, my inner state of love, and that state of truth and purity. And if I'm carrying rubbish, if I'm carrying pollution within myself, it's creating a disturbance within me. And so, because my goal today is to keep myself very clean inside, I don't want that. And so I make a conscious choice. Am I going to hold that, or am I going to let it go? And so it's not even a question of forgiving them. It's really a question of keeping my own inner being so clean that I'm able to stay at peace with myself. If I don't let go and I hold it, I'm punishing myself. I'm destroying the peace that I've worked hard to achieve. And so it's taken me attention and cultivation of that inner state of stability and peace. Now you're throwing stuff at me, and I say, okay, my apron's wide open, give me whatever you want, and I take it in, and I'm allowing it to disturb me. Well, that's not very sensible. And so I decide I don't want that to happen. I want to be able to protect this peace that I've earned. I don't want it to be disturbed. And so I look at the situation and I say, okay, whatever the reason, I don't know their circumstances. They were angry, they were upset, the toast was burnt, something happened, I have no idea. And it's true, here's somebody and you've no idea what it is that they've experienced along the journey, physical or emotional, in coming to this point. And maybe if I were to forgive them at that moment, because I don't know, maybe they've had a very, very hard time and they're coming out with these things because of the harshness of what they've experienced. But if I carry that principle, I want to keep my own peace, then I'm not taking on board the stuff that they're trying to offload. And I'm able to see them with compassion. I'm able to see them, if not with love, at least compassion. And then I don't hold it against them. And so I'm protecting myself in that way. But also it means that this exchange of negative energy, they're putting it out, I'm taking it and throwing it back at them. That's never going to stop. This action-reaction story is just forever. And so they're throwing it, and I have to decide, do I want to take it? And if I take it, then I'm going to spill it out somewhere. And so I can break that vicious cycle of action and reaction through a conscious attention on moving in the direction towards what it is I would like to achieve. And so it's not a selfish desire. When I use this expression, I would like, it sounds as if it's very gross and selfish, but it's not. If I can maintain my peace, I can share peace with others. If I let someone destroy my peace, I'll become an instrument to create chaos around me wherever else it is I go. So maintaining my peace is of service to me, but it's of service to my family and my colleagues at work and everywhere else.
It's very powerful. Another situation which someone brought up was, and I think some may have experienced this, is that we make a new friend and we see so many things we like about them and appreciate about them. And then after a while, our appreciation starts to fade a bit and we start to see the things that we don't like so much. And it becomes, what was a lovely, loving friendship then becomes irritation and frustration and disappointment. What's happening there, and what can we do to keep the love alive, to keep that appreciation alive?
You actually explained it in your little story, Because first I was seeing their goodness, their virtues. Then I started seeing their faults. And so instead of understanding that all human beings are a combination of both at the moment, there's nobody who's perfect, but also probably there's nobody who's 100% evil. Probably not. Maybe 99%, but not 100. And generally, of course, it's a combination of both. And so what is it that I'm focusing my attention on? And it's my choice. I can focus on the goodness, or I can focus on the irritating habits that they have. And literally, it is a question of switching my attention in here. And if I want to keep the love alive, I know that all those other things are there. They're not perfect, but I don't want to give it my energy. I don't want to give it my attention.
And those irritating habits, are they their fault or my fault, or whose fault are they?
Well, at this moment, I don't think that their habits are my fault. But maybe my irritating habits have been the genesis of their irritating habits too. And maybe I can think about that a little bit more as I go along my journey.
I'm just wondering if sometimes I'm expecting things from them that perhaps isn't realistic or whatever. So, and I'm blaming them for their irritating habit. And maybe it's just that it's prodding something in me, or it's just not giving me what I thought I needed. I don't know.
Well, this word expectation is key. That we have such high expectations of others, and we forget that their expectations of us are equally high. And so it's not possible to fulfill all expectations. So let me do the best that I can and understand that the other is probably also doing the same. But nobody's ever going to match up to my expectations. I really don't think so.
We've talked mainly about love in terms of relationships, but what about love for things that are not about people? Love for the planet, love for the wider community, or love for humanity, love for our work? Is that a different kind of love, or is the source the same?
I think it's the same, because spirituality has taught me that everything begins inside. And so if I can start experiencing self-esteem and love for myself, then the next thing that usually happens is that it's easier to have loving relationships with others around me. But also, if I'm loving myself, I'm able to love and appreciate nature. I'm able to experience that sense of awe of the wonder of nature and the planet, but also become aware of my responsibility to nature and the planet. And then in terms of my work, I'll be able to do my work with joy, with love, rather than drudgery or a burden or pressure. And when we begin a career or a profession, it's really with that thought that I'd love to be able to do this. And then somewhere along the line, it just becomes a chore and pressure. And we've lost that passion and that love. But come back to the self, and you'll find that you come back to that same love, whether it was a teaching or for health, helping people heal, whatever it may be. But that passion and love comes back when you learn to love yourself.
January is a very special month for all of us, but particularly for the Brahma Kumaris, because it's actually the month in which our founder, who's in that picture there, passed away. And we always spend extra time in silence and reflection in January. And you personally knew the founder, Brahma Baba, and perhaps you could share a little bit about his vision of love and his vision for humanity.
An amazing, amazing personality. And I first met him when I was a child, and it was just the image of love, but I didn't understand more than that. And then through my teenage years, I had the opportunity of meeting him, but again, it was as this charismatic, amazing person rather than really understanding.
In what way was he charismatic and amazing?
He had eyes that were like X-rays. They were able to reach the soul. They were able to see right through you. And you could feel that. You could feel that he knew everything about you. And when he spoke, it was clear that he did.
Mm.
It was like his mind was so silent, so quiet, that he was able to understand you.
Did that feel comfortable or uncomfortable?
Both. It felt both, because at first it was disconcerting, and then you began to feel his benevolence, that the love was a very pure love that was reaching out to carry you forward with no other motive. And so you began to relax and appreciate that. And so, yes, love was really the hallmark of his personality. But it was when I started to meditate that I actually understood that why he was so loving was because of his love for God. He was absolutely filled with God's love for God, and you could see, in a way, God's love for him. And so being in his company brought you closer to God. And so today, if I remember him, it's for this reason, because it is through his eyes that I was able to feel God's love. And that was an amazing experience. It lifted me out of the consciousness of the skin into a higher consciousness, connecting me with God. His love for the whole of humanity was incredible. I'll share one little story, which will give you an insight into his personality. They had a little garden in Mount Abu, and there were mango trees, and the gardener, who wasn't a meditator, he came to Baba one day. We called him Baba. He came to Baba one day and said that, what can I do with these monkeys? They keep taking away all the mangoes. And Baba had told him not to stone the monkeys, to chase them away. So this is where his complaint was coming from. I don't know what to do with them. I can't stone them. I can't chase them. What should I do? And Baba's reply was, let them enjoy the mangoes. They're not going to go to the market to buy mangoes, and so let them enjoy them. And so whether it was love for monkeys or love for the whole of the world and everything within the world, that was a very special quality. He surrendered everything that he had to be able to create this spiritual university. This was way back in 1936. And at that time, things were quite different in terms of gender inequality. It was a different world in the subcontinent. Even today, things are not as they should be, but especially then. And he decided that he would change things around, and he set up a trust in which it was young women who were coming for meditation, and this was then, one of them was the person who became the head of the organization later. She was 14 years old.
14?
Yeah. So between age 14 and I think 18, a trust of a group of young women, and literally he surrendered all his property to them, trusting that they would be the instruments who could run things. And of course his trust was well-founded and everything worked out beautifully. But his love for the world was that he knew that he had to finish his ego of his property and the self and have that surrender so that then everything that he had could be used for the service of humanity. And his understanding was incredible, that what the world needed was that feminine energy of love, of compassion, of care. And I think the Brahma Kumaris exist today, 80 years later, because he put women in charge. Do you think that's possible?
And Daddy Janki, who you mentioned, was one of those young women, right?
She was one of the founding members, yes.
I'd like then, before we, I will ask you to take us all into an experience of meditation. But before that, just one final question. You started with the self. We always do, I think, here. And perhaps we could go back to saying, what can each one of us do right now, from now on, to bring more love into our lives?
Every time you look into the mirror, look here and see the light. And even if you can't see it, it's not a physical thing, but let yourself just pause for a moment and feel it. And tell yourself, I love you. Try it and see what happens. You're not going crazy, but it's a transformation in the self-talk in which so often we are negative. And so try telling yourself that you love you. Doesn't cost you anything. Easy.
Okay, we'll all try that, right? Good. So, Sister Jayanti, thank you so much for sharing so much about what love is, what perhaps it isn't, what we thought maybe we thought it was, but how it can take us on to so much greater things, but how it starts right there, as you say, with starting with the self. And so perhaps you could then help us to put this into practice by taking us through a short meditation commentary, and we can follow your words and have an experience of that for ourselves. Thank you.
Just let yourself sit comfortably, but preferably with both feet on the ground and not holding on to anything. Just put it down on the chair beside you or the floor or whatever, so that there's no physical things that you're holding on to. I allow the body to relax. And I go on an inner journey. I focus my thoughts on the inner being, the being of light. I, the soul, shine. In this awareness of who I am, the light of the soul shines. I connect with peace. Peace is within me. And in this awareness of peace, I can connect with the Supreme, the being of light, the being of love. And in the presence of the divine, from the source of love, I can feel the waves of love surrounding me. And as I absorb this love within myself, the power of this love begins to heal the soul. God's love washes away the sorrow I have been holding on to. God's love empowers me. I understand what I need to do, but I also have the power with which to be able to do it. God's love cleanses the soul. I had accumulated a lot of dust on my journey, and God's love washes all that away. And makes me clean again. God's love awakens hope. And the power of God's love reaches out into the neighborhood, into the city, and out into the world. And the power of God's love awakens humanity and brings us together as one family. And together we create a better world. A world of peace, of love, of truth. Om Shanti. Thank you.
I'm loath to come into sound after that beautiful silence. Thank you, Sister Jayanti, very much for allowing us all to experience that and giving that real feeling of hope and encouragement for the future, which is very important in January, is it not? But no event at the Brahma Kumaris is complete without a lovely tradition we have called Toli. Toli is a sweet made with an awful lot of love in meditation, and it's something that Sister Jayanti would like to share with all of you. So I would ask you, please, to come. She will come down, if perhaps you could start moving down now, to come one by one, row by row, and just take some Toli from Sister Jayanti and just make that spiritual connection soul to soul as you do so. Thank you all very much indeed for coming, and a special thanks to Mr. Mayor and Lady Mayoress. And we hope to see you all very soon again. Thank you. Wish you good night. Om Shanti.